The discharge waiting area at St. Elizabeth Boardman Hospital smells like floor cleaner and recycled air. There are 12 chairs along the wall by the main entrance. Padded vinyl, dark blue, designed to be wipeable rather than comfortable. A television near the ceiling showed a morning news program with the sound turned low. Outside the glass doors, a gray October sky sat over the parking lot on Boardman Poland Road like a lid. I was in the third chair from the left. On my lap was a plastic bag, the kind hospitals give you for your personal effects, clear with a drawstring top. Inside mine, reading glasses, my wallet, an undercharged phone, a watch my wife Ellen gave me for our 40th anniversary 6 years before she died, and a discharge summary my hands were too unsteady to read. The anesthesia shakes. Most patients experience tremor for several days after major cardiac surgery. In me, it was intermittent and specific, arriving without warning in the middle of simple actions, making a piece of paper behave like something alive. I had been sitting there for 2 hours and 7 minutes. I was watching the clock above the reception desk because it gave me something to focus on other than my phone, which showed no messages and no missed calls from the one number I had tried 3 times that morning. Ryan's number, which had, on each attempt, rung once and gone to a silence that was not voicemail. That specific silence that means you have been blocked. He's not coming, I had thought. He's not going to come. My name is Aaron Miller. I am 71 years old. I spent 36 years as a construction site supervisor across the Mahoning Valley, before my knees, and then my heart made decisions I had been declining to make myself. The surgery had not been a surprise. The surgeon had told me 18 months ago. Triple bypass when the time comes, not if. Ryan had been at that appointment. He squeezed my hand in the parking lot afterward. "We'll figure it out, Dad. Whatever you need." That was 18 months ago. A great deal changes when a man's son marries a woman who has decided the father is a burden rather than a person. Sandra is 38. Ryan is 43. They have been married 4 years. And for 3 of those years, Sandra had been engaged in a project I watched with the helpless attention of a man who understands what is happening to him, but cannot address it without sounding like exactly what she wants Ryan to believe he is. A difficult, demanding old man who cannot accept that his son has his own life. She began with small things, rescheduled visits that became canceled ones, holidays that developed complications, phone calls unreturned for longer intervals. Each instance was explicable. The pattern was not. Ryan drove me to the hospital the morning of surgery. He held my hand at the operating room door. He was gone when I came out. Sandra had called about something with the kids. I did not hear from him on day 1, 2, or 3. On day 4 I called, "How are you feeling, Dad?" "Better. They're talking about discharge. I'll need a ride." A brief pause. Not thoughtlessness. Decision. "Let me check with Sandra about the schedule. I'll call you back." He did not call back. On day 5, I tried 3 times. The third time, the silence told me everything. Now I need to tell you what was happening on Ryan's end, because a story without the full truth is not a story. It is just a complaint. The night before my discharge, Ryan sat at his kitchen table on Overbrook Drive in Boardman, with Sandra across from him, and a conversation he had been avoiding for 3 years arriving whether he wanted it or not. Sandra opened with the practical argument first. "Ryan, we've talked about this. The kids' college funds. The mortgage refinance. We can't keep absorbing every—" "He hasn't asked us for money," Ryan said. "He will." She set down her coffee. "He's 71 and just had bypass surgery and lives alone on a fixed income in a house that needs a new roof. He will ask. And you'll say yes. Because you always say yes." Ryan looked at his hands. This was not untrue. I had borrowed money twice. $900 for a furnace failure in January 2021. Both times Ryan gave it without hesitation. Both times Sandra said nothing directly, but communicated everything adjacent to it through a week of pointed domestic efficiency. "He's my father," Ryan said. "I know," Sandra said, and her voice softened, which was more effective than the harder version because it required him to believe she was on his side. "And I know you love him. But we have 2 kids. We have a mortgage. And Ryan, your father is capable of more than he lets on. What he doesn't have is the motivation to manage independently when he knows you're always going to be there. This was the argument that landed. Not the financial one. The amounts were not large and he knew it. But the suggestion that his availability was not helping me but enabling me, that the safety net was preventing me from building my own ground, that one arrived dressed in the language of care rather than exclusion, and he could not immediately counter it. Is that true? He had thought. Is that what I've been doing? He turned it over for 3 days. During those days, Sandra did not press. She was too skilled to press. She simply placed small pieces of information into the conversation the way you place stones on a path you want someone to walk. A reference to a friend whose aging parent had moved to assisted living and how much better it had been for everyone. A neighbor couple who had set financial boundaries with family and how healthy their marriage had become. Small stones, laid carefully. On the 4th day, she said, "I think you need to take some space from your dad. Just temporarily. Block his number for a week or 2. Let him navigate something on his own. He'll be fine. He's in a hospital. They have discharge protocols. And when you reconnect, it can be on healthier terms." Ryan sat with this for 4 hours. He thought about the quality my voice had developed since Ellen died. Something he had been telling himself was neediness, but which, if he allowed himself honesty, he knew was something simpler and more painful. Loneliness. The quiet loneliness of a man who is 71 and comes home to a house where his wife's reading glasses are still on the nightstand because he has not been ready to move them. He thought about Sandra. About the years of small stones on a path he had walked without registering he was being directed. He thought about the 2 borrowed amounts and tried to find in himself the resentment Sandra's framing suggested he should feel, and he could not locate it, and this troubled him, because its absence suggested that the narrative Sandra had been building about me was not his narrative. It was hers, and he had been renting it long enough to believe it was his own. He picked up the phone. He blocked my number. Then he set the phone down and watched 40 minutes of television he could not afterward recall, because what he was actually doing was managing the low-frequency discomfort of a man who has done something he knows is wrong and has not yet found the version of the story in which it is acceptable. He found it by morning. The hospital had protocols. I would be fine. This was temporary. This was healthy. He made his coffee. He got the kids ready for school. He drove to work. He did not think about the plastic bag or the shaking hands or the 2 hours and 7 minutes in a vinyl chair. He told himself a story and climbed inside it, and kept living there until Patricia Whitfield's Facebook post made the story impossible to inhabit any longer. But I did not know any of this yet. I knew only that the phone was silent. The cab fare to my house was $32 I didn't have in cash, and my hands were too unsteady for the hospital ATM. I was 71 years old with nowhere to go. That was enough to know for the moment. Welcome back to Sweet Family Revenge. Grab your snacks, get comfortable, and remember, the people in these accounts had every chance to behave themselves. They just chose wrong. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. You're going to love it here. And then footsteps on the linoleum. Not the soft tread of nursing shoes, but the harder sound of dress shoes. Unhurried. Deliberate. The walk of a man who is not in a rush because he has decided to be here. Dr. James Whitfield sat down in the chair beside me. He was still in his white coat, 58 years old, with the build of a former athlete maintaining structural habits if not intensity. Hair mostly gray. The face of a person who has spent decades looking at things that matter. He looked at the plastic bag. He looked at me. He said quietly, as if testing whether the words were real before committing to them, "Mr. Miller, do you remember a highway outside Cincinnati? 30 years ago? A car that was on fire?" I looked at him. "Oh," I thought. "Oh." "Yes," I told him. "I remember. That was me in the car," he said. "I've been looking for the man who pulled me out for 30 years. I never knew your name until I saw it on my patient list 3 weeks ago. I wasn't certain until I saw you sitting here." My hands had stopped shaking. "You were wearing a blue jacket," I said. "The car was a gray Honda. You had a textbook in the back seat." "Anatomy," he said. "First year of medical school." We sat with that for a moment. He stood up. He picked up my plastic bag with both hands. Carefully, the way you pick up something that belongs to someone, You are coming home with my family tonight, and for as long as you need. This is not a discussion. Don't cry in the discharge waiting area, I told myself. You are 71 years old and you survived open heart surgery, and you are not going to cry in a vinyl chair. James, I said. Yes, he said. Thank you. He nodded once. We walked out into the gray October morning, and he put my plastic bag in the back seat of his car. The drive to James's house took 23 minutes. He lives in the Canfield area, a quiet township southeast of Youngstown, the kind of neighborhood where people have been for a long time and intend to stay. He called his wife from the car. Her name is Patricia. Bring him home, she said. That was all. He told me about the accident on the drive, falling asleep at the wheel on I-71 during first year of medical school, the guardrail, the smoke, the door that wouldn't open, the heat arriving faster than he could process. You broke the glass with your elbow, he said. Most people would have looked for a rock or a tool. You used your elbow. It was faster, I said. That's the part I've thought about most, James said. Patricia was at the door when we arrived. She came down the porch steps before we were fully out of the car. Thank you for saving my husband's life. I didn't know what to say. He did most of it, I managed. She laughed, a real laugh, and took my arm and walked me into a house that was a home. Children's shoes by the door, a kitchen smelling of garlic and rosemary. A yellow Labrador named Frank, who investigated me with the thorough non-judgment that Labradors apply to all new humans. Patricia showed me to the guest room. A white quilt, warm lamp, towels across the hall. Rest, she said. Dinner is at 6:30. You don't have to do anything until then. Ellen would have liked this house, I thought, lying down. She would have liked these people. I slept 4 hours, the best sleep since before the surgery. At dinner, Emma, 15, with the social poise of a teenager raised in a household where adults are treated as people rather than furniture, looked at me directly. You pulled Dad out of a burning car, she said. Yes, I told her. That's insane, she said, in the tone of a 15-year-old for whom insane is the highest available compliment. Daniel, 12, had barely touched his food. Were you scared? He asked. When you stopped to help? The table went quiet. No, I told him. I didn't have time to be scared. I saw the car, and I stopped, and I ran. The scared part came afterward, when I was driving away, and my hands started shaking. His hands were shaking in the discharge waiting area today, James said quietly, when I found him. Patricia set down her fork. Aaron, you are staying here for as long as you need. This is not negotiable. If you've been listening for a while and want accounts like this to keep coming, it really helps when you hit that like button and subscribe. 97% of people never do. But it's what keeps this whole thing running. So, thank you. For real. On Thursday evening, Patricia posted a photograph on Facebook. Daniel had taken it at dinner. The specific documentary instinct of a 12-year-old who understood something worth recording was happening. It showed me at the head of the table, James and Patricia on either side, Emma and Daniel flanking them, Frank's head visible at the frame's edge, in the eternal optimism of a dog who believes dinner proximity eventually pays off. Patricia's caption, Monday evening. This is Aaron. 30 years ago, when James was in medical school, Aaron stopped on a highway outside Cincinnati and pulled him out of a burning car. James performed Aaron's bypass surgery last week. When Aaron had no one to take him home after discharge, James recognized him in the waiting room and brought him to us. We didn't know his name for 30 years. Now he's at our dinner table. Sometimes the world is exactly what it should be. By Saturday, the post had been shared over 200 times. Local news had picked it up. 3,000 comments from strangers who wanted to say something about it. One comment, Friday afternoon, is this Aaron Miller from Boardman? I think my dad knows him. That, I thought, is going to reach Ryan. Ryan called Saturday morning. His number on my screen no longer blocked. The phone rang 4 times. I put it face down and finished my coffee. Ryan drove to the Whitfield house that afternoon. I watched from the window as he parked and stood beside the gray Subaru, looking at the house the way you look at a door you are deciding whether to knock on. Dark jacket and jeans. His mother's eyes, that gray blue I have always found difficult to look at without feeling the sweet ache of things gone and not gone simultaneously. He looked like a man who had not slept well, and knew why. James answered the door. Ryan looked at James. He said, "I'm looking for my father." James said, "Oh, come in." Ryan came into the living room. Frank investigated his shoes. Ryan looked down at the dog. "Hey, bud," he said quietly. Then he looked at me. "Dad." One word. Everything in it. "Sit down, Ryan," I said. We sat in the working silence of two people trying to find the beginning of something true. I told myself a story. Ryan said, that the hospital would arrange something. That you'd be fine. He looked at his hands. "I blocked your number because Sandra asked me to. She said it would reset the dynamic, that it was healthier. It doesn't matter what she said. I did it. That's mine." "Yes," I said. "It is." "I sat in the discharge waiting area for 2 hours and 7 minutes, I told him. As information, not accusation. A fact he needed completely, without the version that was easier to carry. The plastic bag from my personal effects on my lap. Hands too unsteady to read my discharge summary. Your number going to silence 3 times. The cab was $32 I didn't have in cash. I didn't ask a nurse for help because I couldn't find a way to say out loud that my son had blocked my number 5 days after my bypass surgery. Ryan's jaw tightened. "A stranger sat down beside me," I said. He picked up my bag. He took me to his home. He introduced me to his children as the man who saved their father's life 30 years ago on a highway I had driven past 1,000 times without thinking about it. I looked at my son. His children looked at me the way children look at someone they've decided is worth knowing. "I saw the photograph," Ryan said. "Sandra showed it to me. She didn't mean to. She was making a point and showed me the post, and I read the caption." His voice went unsteady. "She wrote, 'Sometimes the world is exactly what it should be.' And I thought, that should be me. That should be my family. That should be our table." "It can be," I said. "I don't know how to fix this with Sandra." "That's between you and Sandra. What's between you and me is simpler. You're my son. I'm your father. That doesn't have conditions." He looked at the floor. "I blocked your number," he said. 5 days after your bypass surgery." "Yes. That's—" He couldn't finish. "It is," I said. "And it's something I'm choosing to put down, not for you. Because I'm 71 years old, and I've had my chest opened, and I'm sitting in a surgeon's living room, because a stranger remembered me for 30 years. I do not have time to carry things that are heavy and pointless. Do you understand what I'm saying?" "Yes," he said. "Good. Now go say hello to James and Patricia, and give that dog some attention. He's been waiting patiently." Ryan laughed, broken, genuine, slightly waterlogged, and Frank's tail began to move immediately, the irrefutable enthusiasm of a dog who has decided laughter is the best possible development. Ryan stayed until 7. He drank coffee, answered Daniel's questions about electrical engineering. Daniel found this significantly more interesting than Ryan expected, and laughed twice more, both times genuinely. When he left, James held his handshake a beat longer than standard, and said something quietly I couldn't hear. Ryan nodded. He hugged Patricia, who held him the way people hold someone who needs to be held. He drove away in the gray Subaru. Frank sat beside me at the window. "Good dog," I told him. His tail moved. I stayed 3 weeks. I moved back to Shields Road on November 4th. Dorothy is my neighbor. She helped me carry my bag inside, made tea, sat at my table for 2 hours while I told her everything. She cried twice and laughed 3 times. "Ellen, your late wife would be so proud of you," she said. "Ellen would be proud of James and Patricia," I told her. "Yes," Dorothy said, "and of you, for sitting still long enough for someone to find you." Ryan calls on Sundays. 40 minutes each week, real conversations, not the managed exchanges of the past 4 years. He told me 3 weeks ago that he and Sandra are in couples counseling. He said it as information. in the tone of a man doing the work rather than announcing it. I told him I was glad. He asked about James and Patricia. I told him James had invited me for Thanksgiving, and that I thought he and his family might like to come. He was quiet for a moment. Yeah, he said. Yeah, I'd like that. Thanksgiving. Ryan coming. Tell Patricia. Here is what I want to say plainly. There is a kind of goodness that does not announce itself. It does not keep records. It does not perform. It is simply the reflex of a person who has decided, at some foundational level, how they want to move through the world, and who moves that way consistently. Whether or not anyone is watching, whether or not anyone will ever know. I pulled a young man out of a burning car 30 years ago and never told anyone. Not because I was modest, because it did not seem like a thing that required telling. Someone needed help. I stopped. I helped. I drove away. The rest of it was just what you do. What I could not have known is that goodness compounds. Not always quickly, not always visibly, but it does not disappear. It exists somewhere, in someone in the specific memory of a man who became a surgeon and who 30 years later recognized a name on a patient list and felt something clarify. Ryan blocked my number because Sandra convinced him that my need for connection was a form of dependence and that his availability was enabling rather than loving. This distortion is worth naming clearly because it is not uncommon and it is genuinely dangerous. There is a difference between a parent who is demanding and a parent who is simply present, and a person of skill and patience can blur that line until a good son cannot see it anymore. The antidote is not confrontation. It is not argument. It is not proving through words that you are not what you have been accused of being. The antidote is a life, lived consistently, with integrity, in the specific and unhurried way of a person who has decided what they value and acts accordingly whether or not anyone is watching. When Patricia posted that photograph, she was not posting evidence in an argument. She was simply telling a true thing about a true person. And that true thing reached Ryan across 4 years of accumulated distortion and a week of deliberate silence and told him, more clearly than anything I could have said in any phone call, exactly who his father was. The accounts balance, not on a schedule you can predict, but they balance. Sometimes the moment is a highway outside Cincinnati. Sometimes it is a discharge waiting area. Sometimes it is a dinner table with a yellow Labrador and a 15-year-old who says that's insane and means it as the highest compliment available to her. The hands stopped shaking. The scar healed well. The Sunday calls continue. That is enough. If you liked this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more family-centered accounts like this.